20,000 years ago, our hunter-gatherer ancestors knew exactly what it took to feed themselves because they had to hunt for food, they had to gather food from the wilderness, and it was an awful lot of effort, and they recognized this and no doubt gave thanks to these living things that gave their life so that they could have life. But in 10,000 years ago, agriculture started and people started staying in a fixed place to raise crops. But of course, they still understood exactly what was involved in putting food on the table because they were directly involved in animal husbandry and agriculture, and it was still an awful lot of work. But being fixed in a location, people started getting involved in particular trades like potter or blacksmith or weaver or whatever. And that meant that they spent all their time doing that. So they would barter their services and their goods for the food that these people made. But it wasn't that far outside of the village. They still knew what a farm was. They probably had relatives that worked on farms, that they could walk there and see it. It still wasn't a mystery. But then villages grew into cities. And ultimately we arrive in the modern age where people go to supermarkets and probably they've never been to a farm nor ever will in their lives. And I can remember, working in the final years of my law enforcement career in a dispatch center, and you had the first 40 minutes of the shift where people furiously firing messages back and forth across the ops floor, figuring out who was ordering what from where, and all the junk food came in, and you became very quickly aware that most of them never cooked, got what they called food from the supermarket. It was highly processed. You stuck it in the microwave for a few seconds. They ate out all the time. It spent a great deal of money doing this. I remember having a conversation with one person who said they were vegetarian because they didn't want to kill things. Hello, vegetables are from plants that are alive. The reason that we are alive is that we eat things that live. We're part of a cycle that works that way. My wife actually was on Facebook the other day, and there was a person posted a notice saying that she wanted to put a petition out there to get the FDA to list foods that contain DNA. All living things contain DNA. I mean, the list of things in the supermarket that don't contain DNA is an extremely short list. Salt and baking soda, come on. But it's not surprising because people are now so disconnected from living things. They look out the window and they see glass and steel and bricks, and it completely compresses their universe into much smaller horizons. Our ancestors used to be able to see across to the distant horizons, and we can't do that anymore in these big cities. We can't even see the sky for all the light pollution. We're disconnected. We're talking to some of these people in the dispatch center because I brought food that I made. They were utterly amazed. They thought that it took hours to make a sandwich. I made bread, and they thought, well, you could imagine them thinking that I sat there in a chair, watched it rise, and then parked the chair in front of the oven and looked through the oven door and watched it bake until, there it is, ready, take it out. And you try to explain to them that, to bake bread, the actual physical effort was about 15 minutes worth of work. The rest of it, you didn't sit and watch it bake. You went off and did other things. People are so disconnected. So give some thought, to that food on your table and where it came from, and give some thanks to the living things that gave you life so that you could go on and do what you do and realize that you're part of that cycle. That's one of the things that I hope that the Paikin community is teaching everybody, is to reconnect with life. And there was a study done in hospitals a number of years ago where they were trying to figure out what would happen if the view of the patient was a whole bunch of steel and glass and brick out the window, as compared to patients that looked at the window and saw living things, saw greenery and stuff. Not surprising, the ones that saw the greenery, the living things, healed about 50% faster. Something to think about. Remember your connection to the life out there. Remember that you're part of it. It's an important thing, and go out there and honor that stuff that gives you life by taking some time to learn how to cook and make a decent meal, because that way you're making the best use of it. It's a lot cheaper too. So go, and part of the system that we have in the Order of Paladins with our magical weapons, one of them is the cauldron, and people sometimes wonder about that, but that's why it's there, because it's so important, because it represents that connection to life, you know, and our dependence upon it, and how we use those things for healing. A lot of our medicines come from living things as well. So go out there and be glorious, and remember that connection.